Under the blistering afternoon heat, terrified cavalrymen are scraping at the hard Montana earth with tin cups, desperately trying to hollow out a trench behind the bodies of their own horses. The plunging fire raining down on these troops is coming from captured U.S. Army Springfield carbines, stripped from the bodies of their dead comrades miles away. When we think of the Little Bighorn, we usually picture romanticized oil paintings of Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer and his final stand. The reality of that day lies on a ridge to the south, with 340 survivors who endured a brutal 40-hour siege. Prioritizing the measurable data of modern forensic archaeology over the sanitized memoirs of the surviving officers reveals a documented record of total tactical collapse. To understand how they ended up trapped on that ridge, we have to start earlier in the afternoon of June 25, 1876. Major Marcus Reno leads 140 men through the choking dust into the southern edge of a massive Native American encampment in the Little Bighorn Valley. Reno's troops dismount and form a skirmish line. They begin firing directly into the village, setting lodges ablaze. During this initial assault, the wives and children of the Hunkapapa Lakota leader Gal are killed in the crossfire. The response from the camp is immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of highly motivated warriors stream out of the village to meet the attack, hitting the center and the exposed left flank of the cavalry line. Within 20 minutes, Reno's line collapses backward into the timber along the bend of the river. The doctrine of a standard cavalry offensive has failed, replaced entirely by a primal fight for survival. Inside the timber, the situation deteriorates instantly. Reno's Arikara scout, Bloody Knife, is shot through the head right next to the major. The impact splatters blood and brains directly onto Reno's face. The trauma breaks Reno's nerve. He issues confusing orders to mount, dismount, and mount again, leading a chaotic, uncoordinated route toward the river. The retreat devolves into what Native American accounts later describe as a buffalo chase. Reaching an 8-foot steep riverbank, the cavalrymen are trapped in a bottleneck. Warriors pull soldiers directly from their mounts, clubbing them as horses fall back onto the men struggling in the water below. This is tactical disintegration. The chain of command has effectively severed, leaving every man to fend for himself as the retreat dissolves into a race for the heights. Leaving 38 men dead or missing in the valley, the battered survivors scramble up a steep 300-foot bluff on the other side of the river. They arrive exhausted, bleeding, and entirely without a defensive strategy. Just as Reno's depleted forces reach the bluffs, they are joined by Captain Frederick Benteen's battalion. Benteen carries a handwritten message from Custer's adjutant, reading, "Be quick, bring packs." Hearing heavy firing to the north, Captain Thomas Weir leads an advance to find Custer. At a high pinnacle now known as Weir Point, his troops hit a wall of warriors and are violently driven back. Through the smoke and dust, they catch only a distant, obscured glimpse of the battlefield, where Custer's 5 companies are being annihilated. As night falls, the survivors dig in on the bluffs. A profound claustrophobia settles over the ridge. Down in the valley, they see the orange glow of enormous leaping bonfires and hear the steady rhythm of victory dances echoing up the slopes. Panicked and emotionally shattered, Reno proposes abandoning their wounded and fleeing under the cover of darkness. Benteen steps in, firmly refusing the order and taking control of the defense. That firelit night is the ultimate psychological crucible of the battle. The men on Reno Hill process the gravity of their situation. Their command is fractured, they are entirely alone, and they are surrounded. At the first hint of dawn, a single rifle shot signals the resumption of the siege. Lakota and Cheyenne warriors have seized the high ground, pouring a constant stream of bullets and arrows into the shallow pits. This map of National Park Service archaeological data uses yellow dots to pinpoint Native American firing positions surrounding the Reno Benteen defense site. Unique ballistic signatures on cartridge cases prove warriors rained fire down from these exact elevated locations, utilizing captured Springfield carbines and repeating rifles. Under this punishing crossfire, the wounded men in the hospital depression are tormented by severe thirst. Driven by desperation, 19 volunteers slipped down a steep, exposed ravine, filling canteens and camp kettles under a barrage of enemy fire. This act of survival was so critical to the troops' morale that those 19 men later received the Congressional Medal of Honor. The forensic distribution of the bullets in the dirt explicitly validates the claustrophobic horror of the siege. It proves mathematically that the troops were hopelessly pinned down by an enemy that commanded the terrain with overwhelming tactical superiority. By the late afternoon of June 26th, the firing finally slackens. The village sets the dry prairie grass ablaze, and behind a thick wall of smoke, an immense procession of families and warriors begins an exodus toward the mountains. The next morning, the column of General Alfred Terry arrives to lift the siege for the 340 survivors on Reno Hill. But their relief turns hollow when Terry's men reveal the total annihilation of Custer and the 5 northern companies. For decades, historical accounts of the Little Bighorn were shaped by the sanitized memoirs of surviving officers, written to protect military reputations. But a collection of artifacts pulled directly from the battlefield tells a different story. The physical evidence left in the ground, the mixed cartridge casings, the shattered bones, and desperately scraped rifle pits, exposes exactly how close the entire 7th Cavalry came to being erased. The dirt holds the unvarnished truth of the American frontier. If you want to dig deeper into the physical history of these historic battles, subscribe to Crazy Horse Chronicles and join us for the next investigation.